Hi, I'm Jess, and welcome to my channel. Veronica Roth recently announced a new book in her famous Divergent series, a reimagining of the first book if Tris had chosen a different faction. Some people have reacted negatively to this book announcement, calling it lazy and a cash grab. This new book is basically fanfic, and since I have been planning on making a video discussing the ethics of publishing fanfiction, I've decided that this book announcement is the perfect jumping off point. Before it gets started, you should know where my biases are. I never got into fanfic. It's just not something that interests me. I have nothing against fanfic. In fact, I think writing fanfic is a great way for aspiring writers to practice writing. And reading fanfic is a fun way for people to engage with a fandom they enjoy. I've just never felt strongly enough about a fandom to seek out non-canon stories about that fandom. So overall, I feel positively about fanfiction existing for free on the internet. I've just never felt the desire to engage with it myself. As for Veronica Roth, I've never read any of her books. They just don't interest me. But I haven't heard anything bad about her as a person, and it's great that other people read and enjoy her books. So I'm approaching discussing her books from a fairly neutral perspective. This video will contain my opinions. If you disagree with me on something, that's okay, and you should feel free to tell me what you think in the comment section. There's been a trend lately of fanfic being picked up and published by trad publishers. From a business perspective, I get it. Why wouldn't you publish something that is already popular? It means you're guaranteed readers, but something being a smart business decision doesn't make it ethical. In my mind, there are 3 types of fanfic that get published. The first is an author writing fanfic of their own IP, like Veronica Roth and the new Divergent book. In my opinion, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. To address the main complaints I've seen, it's not lazy to revisit a world and characters you've already created. Authors do this all the time. Usually when authors revisit an existing world or character, they are adding to a series. In the case of Veronica Roth, she's creating an alternative history. Either way, it's still a whole new story. As for being a cash grab, so what? I know Veronica Roth has made a statement saying that she has plenty of money and that she doesn't need more. But even if she had said this was all for the money, my response would still be so what? There's nothing wrong with artists making money. We all live in a capitalistic society and need money to live. Someone writing a book that they know will sell well just to make money isn't that big a deal. No one is getting hurt and no one is being taken advantage of. I have no issues with authors publishing fanfic of their own IP. This applies to authors and books that I don't like too. There are plenty of things I don't like about Stephanie Meyer, but the fact that she has published 3 versions of Twilight isn't one of them. There's the original Twilight, there's Midnight Sun, Twilight from Edward's point of view, and there's Life and Death, the gender-swapped Twilight. I admire that some authors seem to enjoy their own stories so much that they revisit them and write alternative versions of them. The second type of fanfic is fanfic written using IP in the public domain. I also have no problem with this type of fanfic. This category includes fairy tale retellings, something that I love, retellings or reimaginings of classics, and stories that include historical events and/or historical figures. Fairy tales are so widespread, and there are so many similarities between tales across cultures that it's impossible to attribute a specific story to a specific author. These are stories that don't belong to anyone, and even if you were to trace it all the way back to its original, you would find that it was inspired by other stories. Since there is no one to steal from, there's nothing wrong with using the characters or the plot points we're also familiar with to tell a new story. I also see no problem with retelling the classics or using IPs where the copyright has expired. Legally, there's nothing wrong with this, and in my opinion, there's nothing ethically wrong with it either. I don't think there's anything wrong with breathing new life into an old story by reimagining it in a different setting. Books that I consider this type of fanfic include Pride and Prejudice and Zombies by Seth Grahame-Smith, Lost in the Neverwoods by Aidan Thomas, a Peter Pan retelling, and What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, The Fall of the House of Usher retelling. The authors of the original IP are long dead and therefore no longer care if you steal their ideas. Writing fanfiction of historical people or events is also fine. The entire historical fiction genre would be screwed if it wasn't. There's no IP to copy here. To say that it's not okay to write fiction about any time period other than the present is ridiculous. So obviously writing fictitious versions of real history is okay. It's no different than writing fictitious versions of the present day. Now you might argue that historical fiction doesn't count as fan fiction, and I'm not going to fight you on that point. Most historical fiction wouldn't be considered fan fiction, but some of it is, and I just didn't feel like drawing the line that divides the fan fiction type of historical fiction from regular historical fiction. Something like the Temeraire series by Naomi Novik is arguably Napoleonic War fanfiction. But something like my favorite book, To Dance at the Palais Royal, I wouldn't try to argue is fanfiction. It's just historical fiction. My point is, historical events and people are fair game when it comes to writing fanfiction. As an aside, now that I've mentioned Naomi Novik, she's another author who has written fanfiction of her own IP. Her short story, Dragons and Decorum, is simultaneously Pride and Prejudice fanfic and Temeraire fanfic. It's very good. It's published in the book Buried Deep and Other Stories. Buried Deep is also an amazing short story, my favorite from the collection. It's a retelling of the story of Ariadne and the Minotaur. Back to the topic of published fanfic. The final type of fanfic, and probably the most controversial, is fanfic with the serial numbers rubbed off. This is the type of fanfic that publishers really seem to love right now. Famous examples of this type of fanfic include 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James and the After series by Anna Todd. In general, I think this type of fanfic being published is unethical. Something like 50 Shades of Grey relied heavily on the character development done in the original story, in this case Twilight. Even after rubbing off the serial numbers, it's still recognizable as being derived from the original IP. Using 50 Shades of Grey as an example, some of the things Anna does only make sense when you remember that she is Bella Swan. For example, Anna doesn't like receiving birthday presents. E.L. James never established why that is. It only makes sense when you remember that Bella also doesn't like receiving birthday presents. And Stephanie Meyer left enough context clues in the Twilight series for readers to figure out why she doesn't like that kind of attention. These types of fanfiction rely so heavily on the original IP that they don't count as an original idea, making them unethical to sell. As for books like the After series, well, they're fanfic of real living people. Using real people in fanfiction, especially when those people haven't consented to being included, is gross. It's not okay to use someone's likeness without their permission. This type of fanfic might be legally okay to publish, but in my mind, it's not ethical. The amount of rewriting that would be needed for me to say this type of fanfic is ethical would mean that it is no longer fanfic, because all traces of the source material will have been removed. I haven't mentioned what I will call relationship dynamic fanfic yet. For a while, Reylo fanfic was popular in the trad published fanfic space. I don't really have a problem with published Reylo fic, because what I've seen of it is not really the characters being used, it's just their relationship dynamic. And that relationship dynamic was already an established trope in the romance genre. Tying that existing trope to a popular franchise doesn't really bother me all that much. I'm not entirely opposed to fanfic being published for profit. I mostly just have a problem with it when it is still very clearly linked to an existing IP that is protected under copyright. I didn't even get into the issue of published fanfic, keeping problematic IPs in the public consciousness. I'm looking at you, Hermione fanfic. Or the way that profiting off of fanfic puts fanfic as a whole at risk, like the whole Anne Rice situation many years ago. Both of those topics are worthy of a video on their own. If you'd like me to make a video on either of those topics, leave me a comment letting me know. If you've made it this far, you must have liked the video, so do me a favor and hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already, and maybe consider sharing this video with your friends. Thanks for watching and have a good rest of your day.